Good morning, good afternoon, good evening,
Not
wherever
true.
you are. And thank you very much for joining us once again. We are back. At least, Rod is not ill and I'm not busy. So we are able to do this once again. So you see the title. So I think that we should actually jump right into it because people may have a lot to talk about or discuss. And we're going to use this opportunity to have a look at or have a second look at the latest OM system releases, which is the OM-1 Mark II. I have it right here. And also the new lens, which I also have it here, the 150 to 600, 5.6 to 6.3. And I have both items here together with the old gear, the original OM-1 Mark I, and some of the lenses that I want to compare it with in this discussion. So let's do this. And first of all, before I jumpstart everything and say hello to everyone, and also welcome Rod back. So how are you, Rod?
I'm very well, thank you. I wasn't ill for very long, but what it lacked in duration, it made up for in intensity. So
That doesn't sound too good to me.
it wasn't too good. No, but here we are. We're fine.
Right,
I'm fine.
right. Okay. So one of the reasons that I want to discuss this today is obviously people may have already seen my review on these items that I just showed you, but I want to get a second opinion. I want to get something from you because you have been reviewing different cameras from different formats. Literally, you are the encyclopedia in the camera world. So you've seen things, and so it's just from your opinion. I mean, I just want to kind of get your perspective on the latest releases to start with, and then we can go to individual items. So obviously, this is kind of like a big thing for OM System. This is 2024, and it's in January, and they released like two products at the same time at the beginning of the year. What do you think of the in terms of strategy? Why why didn't they split the two items maybe in a couple of months apart, or maybe they have something in like planning for the later on this year's, and they kind of squash everything into just 1 month all of a sudden. It kind of shocked me a little bit.
Well, I suppose you could argue that individually the camera and the lens might not have made a very big splash. So maybe it made sense to OM System to do them both at the same time. Don't forget, there's a third lens too.
Yep.
If you a kind of refresh, a refresh of the 9 to 18.
We can come back to that a little bit later, but
Okay, yeah.
but do you think maybe OM System, obviously off the book because you all know that my status with OM System, but do you think it's kind of like a response to Panasonic's release of the G9 Mark II, which is kind of late last year, literally just a few months ago. So obviously the G9 Mark II created quite a big stir in the community, and it was fabulous cameras. And I also made a review on it, and I mean I think it's a great camera. I used it for a few things, and I actually used it for a lot of videos as well, for YouTube videos, especially the advancement in the AF, which is actually quite phenomenal. And obviously they also have the different kind of video options that currently OM System doesn't have, which you can come back to that a little bit later, because this is one area that I think OM System could improve on in the future. But yeah, generally, I think that do you think maybe OM System kind of like pushed into the corner in a way that, okay, yeah, Panasonic's done a great job with the G9 Mark II, and then they created that attention, for the Micro Four Thirds world, and now it's our turn. Like, should we just go one thing at a time? Should we just double it? Just to have a double impact.
It's difficult. I think there are going to be all sorts of opinions about this. Personally, I'm disappointed that Olympus is not using the 25 megapixel MFT sensor that Panasonic has, but maybe Panasonic doesn't want Olympus to have that. I have no idea. But that is a mild disappointment for me. I think, I don't know. I think there's a good side and a bad side to what Olympus has done. On the good side, I think Olympus, OM System. I do beg your pardon. I think OM System.
We still call it Olympus.
I think OM System has done what Nikon often did with its DSLRs. It hasn't gone for headlines. It's gone for carefully thought out refinements where it matters most.
Right.
So I think that is a good thing. I remember back when I was on a Nikon magazine, Nikon did the D7100, then the D7200, then they did the D800, then the D810, and there were lots of little updates where you said,
Yep.
"Is this really a new camera?" But collectively, well, yes, yeah. And the thing was that if you had a D800, you probably wouldn't buy a D810. You'd wait for the next thing. And if you had a D7100, you probably wouldn't get the D7200. But if you
Yep.
were coming to these systems
For the
cold
first time. Yep.
for the first time, then it would make sense to keep refreshing your flagship products so that you had a proposition that's, quite current, quite compelling for that
Yep.
time. So
Yep.
I think there will be lots of people who are disappointed in what might seem like relatively small changes in the Mark II. But at the same time, if you look at it in isolation, what OM has done is has brought it up to date, has made it more competitive than it would have been if this had not been done. So I think the changes are things that people who are into this system will find useful, but people who are outside of the system might say,
Yep.
so what?
Yeah, I mean,
So,
obviously now
bit of both.
we're talking about the camera, so let's jump right into the camera discussion right now. So I agree
Right.
with your point, and let's put my ambassadorship aside, and as a photographer myself, I look at cameras objectively. I don't usually I look at it saying, okay, I need the latest and the greatest. To be quite honest, most of the cameras I've used in the past, even like go all the way back to OM-1 Mark II, that's my first kind of professional Micro Four Third camera. I could still, perfectly fine. I mean, megapixels aside, which some discussion that we had before, and I'm still very happy using the OM-1 Mark II to do my job. There's no necessity, no urgency for me to upgrade any cameras, and I have access to it just because, my relationship with OM System and Olympus before that. But other than that, I could, potentially still using the OM-1 Mark II to conduct all my personal pay jobs and everything like that. And I mean, obviously it's a bit old now, probably died a couple of years ago if I continue using it, but that's besides the point. But as a professional, that's what I'm trying to say, is that I look at the camera as how it functions, how it handles, and how whether it makes sense for me as a business, whether it can deliver the goods, basically. And the Mark II that I have it right here, and I have used it for almost 2 months now, and I was one of the earlier one to use it, and so I think that a lot of refinement, as you said, is actually quite significant. It may not come across that's different or, oh wow, it's an advancement from the previous generations. It's not like that. But there are things that you would definitely notice as soon as you pick it up and start shooting with it. It's quite hard to explain. But then I guess if those who already seen Petapixel's latest video yesterday, Chris Nichols already mentioned the same thing. And you've probably seen some other user report from early ambassadors and other things. And those who used it would have that similar comments. So Petapixel is nothing to do, they have no relationship with OM System. They are independent reviewer, so they look at the camera objectively just like what they do with all the other cameras. So they said the same thing, because they said, okay, the front dial definitely a lot easier to use. The buttons seems a little bit more responsive, faster, so on and so forth. The technical aspects side of it, I personally think that they have done something that addressed some critical comments by some of the bird photographers. I think this update is mainly for those who are usually pushing the camera to that sort of limit. For the 99% of us, even myself, I don't push that limit. I don't shoot 60 frames per second. I never do. And occasionally, if I dabble with some animals and birds, I might try it out just a little bit, just have some fun. But if you ask me to do that every day, no, that's not my thing. And so some of the advancement in the Mark II doesn't relate to me. However, it relates to those who do, which are birds and fast-paced photography, animal shots, and things like that, which is what the OM-1 was designed for. So the Mark II, after seeing all the reviews and comments from different videos, different photographers, they're not ambassador. If you Google around bird photography, I'm pretty sure you come up with some of the OM-1 videos, and these are professional bird photographers, so they actually commented on the buffer. So this buffer thing coming up like day after day after day, people keep reporting, oh, I hit the limit, I just don't have enough frames. So OM system heard that, and they said they have to do something about it. Like you said, Rod, they need to bring it up to date. And otherwise, they're going to lose out because the G9 Mark II, for instance, they have bigger buffer. So, that's the thing there. So, would they want to have these people who bought into the OM-1 exchange for the G9 Mark II? I mean, just talk about business-wise. And then would they want to keep using the OM system body by bringing out a new body that have bigger buffer if they're already into the system, have the lenses and everything? So I think this is a kind of like a smart thing for them. I know it's a bit niche. It may upset some of the photographers like us, like Porches and all the other who may not use those new features. But for those who do, I think that it's going to be one of those discussions, divided discussion, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's another interesting point here as well, that if you discount advances in video capabilities with other manufacturers, all the big headline updates and new cameras from other makers are all centered around video. There's very little happening in the field of still photography development at the moment, and hasn't been for some time. So if you look at it from that perspective, what OM System has done with the OM-1 2 is probably on a par with what other makers do with their stills photography capabilities when they launch a new camera. It's just that there isn't the extra splash of like 4K 60 or 4K 120 or in camera raw video capture that other makers tend to be introducing now. So OM System has been pretty static with the video stuff, and that I think has taken away some of the potential headlines for a new camera. If the video isn't changed and then the stills are only modestly improved, it doesn't look like much of an update. But if you're a stills photographer, it's no less of an update than other camera makers do.
No, and I think you had a point there. Obviously, for a lot of consumers, at least, a lot of the younger generations of creators and photographers these days, they're more curious about the video specs, even though they are photographers. But a lot of them are on YouTube, so they want something that they can film, they can do both in a way. So I get your point there. But in terms of photography, I think the Mark II does advance something in terms of computational stuff, and the new live Grad ND is I said it in my video, and I think that if I'm an outsider, if I haven't got any OM system cameras, that will be one of the features that actually tempt me to buy the camera, because I travel a lot, and I do like to take my camera whenever I travel, and I like to take some nice cityscapes and landscape of some sort, depending on where I am. I do carry grad filters, and that's so. When I saw that digital live grad ND, immediately struck me that that feature will be really, really cool. And I also sometimes occasionally I go out to photograph London and Parliament buildings and Thames River Thames. So like we have these high contrast scenes very often, like especially during winter times when you have the very bright sky and you got really dark shadow foreground. And without an ND filters or any sort, you're going to be risking, clipping the highlights or the shadow. Of course, I can do HDR, I can stack images, but then you are doing more works. But this live ND actually does work by balancing the exposure.
Well, I think the thing is with the British climate, especially, the sky is always a problem, and you're stuck with this dilemma. If you reduce the exposure just enough to stop the sky clipping, you then have to do quite a lot of work on the shadows, bringing them up, which doesn't really help with image quality.
No.
So the other alternative is to use graduated filters. They are a nuisance. They practically, on the OM system, practically double the size of the camera. I would say. Let's be honest. They are fiddly.
Yep.
I don't like them. So this idea appeals to me a lot, even if I just use it at a weak setting. I don't know what's the weakest. Is it one stop? Something like that?
Yeah. Let me have a look. I can't remember the exact number. I think it's EV4. So let me just see.
So that'd be 2 stops, wouldn't it?
Yes. Let me just go in here, have a look. So the live ND. Right. Okay. Oh, sorry, I'm in video mode. That's why it doesn't work. Yes, so live Grey Andy doesn't work in video mode.
Okay, that's a shame.
Right. I know. Imagine that. Imagine they can do that digitally in video. I think
Yeah.
they're gonna kill the entire market instantly.
Yeah.
And
but no, even if you used it at fairly low level,
one EV, one stop. So GN2, GN4, GN8. So 1, 2, 3 basically. 1, 2, 3 stops.
So I'd probably use it on one stop just to lower the sky luminance just by one stop. I can still do some more editing in software, which I probably prefer to do, but just to bring the sky a bit closer.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've tried it.
It's a valuable step.
I mean, I've showed you guys. If I don't know if you can focus this, you can probably see this, and yeah, that's the options there. 1, 2, and 3 different stop, and obviously
can you shift it up and down the frame, and can you change the blend, or is it just? Yeah,
you can.
Fixed?
It's really helpful because everything's configurable, and in terms of the graduation, you can have hard stop, hard, soft, and medium. Yeah. So it's just like any traditional graduation filters that we used to use in landscape photography, and also angle. You can adjust the angle up and down. All the precision can be adjusted. It is a very useful tool for those who really use it. And for me, even though I'm a portrait photographer, every time I go travel, I tend to take some landscapes and cityscapes, and these sort of filters it helps dramatically. Like I said, unlike the live ND that they had in the previous cameras, this doesn't need to. This doesn't restrict in certain modes or certain shutter speed, and this one you can use in any shutter speed, which is great. And I just find it extremely useful in that sense. So I can just go out, even though it's a bright sky, I can easily just switch it on, 2 seconds, just a couple of buttons. You can customize it so you can activate straight away with one of the custom button and shoot it immediately. So it's actually a very, very handy tool. So yeah, that is one feature that I think relating to me personally, I think is really cool. The second thing, I think someone already mentioned, I think one of the comments talking about the AF, autofocus is another advancement. Previously, the OM-1 in stills modes, I think is pretty good. I have no complaint about it. I think it's fantastic for doing what it needs to do for focusing people, animals, or anything like that you want to throw at it. The Mark II is now even faster and definitely stickier when it comes to tracking. For those who may want to use any of the AI recognition mode, obviously now that I said that as well, is now got the human recognition. So they kind of fine-tune a lot of the menu within the AF menu. So they refine it. So it's a lot more simpler to use. So there's no longer a kind of face and eye, but there's still a face and eye option where you can tick. So when you tick that, and I don't know why it's still there, but then in the AI recognition mode, when you enable human tracking, it will try to prioritize the focus on the human face and eyes. But I think they could get rid of that completely, because any of these subject recognition, including animals, they will automatically look for the eyes anyway. So I think that option may potentially disappear in the future firmware updates, because the human subject recognition mode is already doing that job anyways. But they have the options. I suppose is trying to prioritize the eyes and face whenever it recognizes something, but it's good anyway, and it's very sticky. It's very usable. It's not like before. If you use it a lot, when you buy the Mark II and you try the Mark II, when you see it side by side, when you definitely see the difference there. But the good thing is that it now works in videos as well, because previously, one of the reasons I didn't use the OM-1, original OM-1 for a lot of video works is for YouTube especially, is filming myself, is because the AF wasn't 100% reliable, depending on situations. I think the Mark II definitely a lot better. I mean, I would say even double better. If I give it a percentage, like 200%, it's actually quite good. It's very sticky now, and also, like I said in the review video, you can now also prioritize certain custom group AF points, so you can force the recognition in a certain zone. So it doesn't need to leave it open, let the computer decide where to focus and things like that. So now you can actually customize certain groups, put it in a off frame, for instance, and so if you stand in a certain position, you intend to stand in a certain position, you can just move it over there to make it even more reliable and sticky and more maybe predictable where the camera is going to focus.
It's fine. That it'd be even better if these cameras were more video focused, I think. I this is where it's hard to know, you know, it's a chicken or egg situation. Is OM system not targeting video because it's decided there isn't a market there, or is it just that requires a bit more R&D investment than the company's willing to put in, which would be my personal suspicion.
Yeah.
But I think one of the earlier comments in the chat has been that other makers put a lot of money into new video features because that's where the audience of the money is. And I do think that's probably true. A lot of people feel now that they need a camera that can do both stills and video, and a balance between the two. And even if they don't shoot video very much, or they're not very good at it, I think there's a perception that the video performance is and will be very important. And it's a bit of a shame.
It is. I mean, like, obviously, I shoot videos, and I do have video projects and clients myself. So I do use the camera for filming, for videoing. Personally, I mean, I think my personal opinion about this particular point is, for majority of the so-called hybrid photographers, for those who like to dabble with some videoing, and quite frankly, I think what OM-1, the original OM-1, even before that, the E1 Mark III or the E1X is more than sufficient. And simply because, you know, many photographers don't quite understand a lot of the video terminologies and a lot of the technologies, a lot of the things. You talk about zebra, you know, what is zebra? You know, you talk about photographing zebra. You know, no, it's not like that. But just a lot of these little things. It's only the filmmakers, a lot of people who are really into videoing will understand those terms. And there may be videographers who turn photographers would be more beneficial having something like that. But for photographers who turning videographers or trying to do a little bit of videoing on the side, I think those extra options may actually be becoming too complicated. And I think OM system may be realizing that that's the point. So there are two ways of looking at it. I think, okay, maybe we just continue focusing on the still side by leaving the videos as an option, you know, kind of side option for those who just want to capture a clip or whatever they're photographing and not so much about making a video out of it or making a film out of it. Or second, what I think is probably more appropriate is that they're probably thinking about it, but since the GIP took over the camera side from Olympus and the whole rebranding thing, the restructurings, is that I think the is still going through a phase at the moment that the company is still trying to figure out internally and all the resources and where everything should go. And I think that maybe in the backbone, maybe in the back planning somewhere, is the video is coming. It's just not there yet. They want to focus on what can make the money first at the moment. I think that's the most critical part for any businesses, right? You know, and they need to survive. The brand needs to survive. They need to make money. They need to sell cameras and sell lenses. And so they focus on what they have now and maybe strengthening what they already got in the core business. From that point, I mean, we discussed it earlier. I think that, or maybe even before this particular chat, that OM system now, of course, focusing on a lot of wildlife and outdoor theme kind of photography more than anything else that previously known for, like street and travel photography. What's your take on that? You know, in terms of you know, like now they may be too. You think they're too focused on one thing, or maybe they should be diversifying just a little bit out? And because quite honestly, you know, like camera gear is there, lenses are there. It's just whether, you know, you listen to their marketing videos or not. You know, it's entirely up to you. You can still buy a camera that is marketed for wildlife or your portraits. There's no difference in that. But obviously, I can see what people is frustrating about. You know, why all the Instagram, all the reels, all the promotional materials, all surrounding the outdoor stuff.
Yeah. The issue for me is that the OM system is taking the whole system in a different direction to the one I'm going in. So no, this is a thing. They've chosen a very niche market, which I'm not a part of. I first got into MFT for entirely different reasons, for the small form factor, for travel, for just casual photography for myself, but also because it was an affordable way to get high quality results with very good lenses without spending silly money on full frame systems. And I still use OM system gear for that. If ever I need to just do a job and get some images, it's what I use, because for the money, I think the quality you get is very, very good. But if OM system is going to put all its development effort into this particular outdoor leisure wildlife market, then that's not what I do. And the more it goes that way, the less relevant it's going to be to me as a system. I mean, the gear I've got is likely to do the job I need it to for years to come. But it's a bit disappointing to think that that's it now. I'm not going to get any more of the type of camera products that I use.
Yeah. Well, and obviously, you know, like that goes back to the whole discussion about how relevant it is now for Micro Four Third within the industry. But I think it's still relevant, and I think that it's still a good option for photographers, right? We now seeing that even among the amongst all the other camera brands like Nikon, Canon, between Canon and Nikon and Sony, they're still fighting for the same pool of thing, but it's actually pretty good for both APS-Cs and Micro Four Third as a cropped option. For a simple fact is that now you see a lot of the full frame photographers now adding crop sensor options for more reach. And then they see that, you know, instead of buying into a very expensive long range lenses, they can have just a cheaper option in MFT, for instance, but they have double the reach or double the focal length equivalent, which are going to come onto the lens discussion in a minute. But this is one thing that I discussed it last week, is that one of the reasons why it's been reported that MFT market share has increased a little bit is not because I think user base has increased in terms of core user base. It's actually people who are adding the MFT system to their current kit for specific jobs. So for those who like to use other cameras to do other, you know, travels or whatnot, landscape, but they may want to try a little bit. Maybe I want to try to. I'm going to Safari next year. I want to get a camera system, or I want to get a lens to photograph some cheetahs running in the wild. But they look at the full frame options and they start to think, oh my god, these lenses cost about like $6,000, $7,000. I can buy it. I can buy into the Micro Four Third, get a decent Micro Four Third body, and even like one of the E1 bodies, and for, you know, relatively okay second-hand price. If even brand new, you're looking at just over $1,000 for the OM-1 currently, and then you can get one of those 300 f4 prime for, you know, again depending on used or new could be about $2,000, but used you can get it for about 1,500, maybe slightly less. So you can get a whole system for probably under half the price of what a full frame lens would be, and also depending on the weight as well. And so people may be thinking about adding MFT or even APS-C like Fuji's and Fujifilm cameras in as a secondary system. And now I see that a lot of users are asking for this type of thing, and OM system may be realizing that, I think. And people who want and need longer reach lenses when they can't afford the full frame alternatives, they were looking for the crop options, which is actually cheaper.
I don't think there's any argument that MFT is very effective for that kind of photography. I suppose my only issue is that is not the only type of photography that people want to do, and that MFT is very good at other kinds of photography. But that if OM system has decided that is the particular niche it wants to pursue, that suggests to me that there's going to be no further development in the things I'm interested in. The OM system cameras I have and the lenses I have will continue to be perfectly good at that kind of work. But it'd be disappointing to imagine I'll never have anything better to look forward to, and
Sure.
that this is it.
Well, on the side note, in that case, and so let's move on a little bit. So, in terms of future camera developments, let's if more specific targeting OM system in today's discussion, is what would you like to see from them in the next release in terms of like camera developments or maybe model lines? When I say model line, well, obviously in the older Olympus days, we only have the pen line and also the OMD lines, which is the kind of SLR style body, and the pen will be more like a rangefinder, compact camera look and styling. What would you like to see, in let's say the next two camera developments, and would you like to see obviously something else than the flagship?
Yeah, if I didn't say bring back the pen.
Yay!
if OM system does nothing else, bring back the pen. I mean, I'd rather have a pen with a viewfinder.
Yeah.
I mean, my EP7 is fine, but I do miss the viewfinder. But honestly, I'm convinced there's a much larger market for an affordable, ideally weather-resistant little travel camera than there is for a highly specialized, somewhat expensive bird photography kit.
Yeah.
I'm guessing at the ratios, but I would say I would expect that for every keen bird photographer, there must be 100 or 1,000 keen bloggers or travel photographers or influencers looking for a camera that produces decent results, that doesn't cost too much, doesn't weigh too much, and just does the job and has a bit of style to it. So yeah, please gonna have a new pen, please. Ideally with a 25 megapixel sensor, but I guess if not, we can live without that. But just show some interest, please, to the larger to this market, which has always been so strong for this brand.
I'm all up for a pen F, new pen F cameras myself, and I still have mine. I love mine. It's just one of those cameras that I think struck a good balance of being well built, portable, a form factor, while still maintaining a relatively good quality sensors that you can still exploit in photography. It's that camera can shoot video, but then the Pen F obviously is really tailored for photographers. And I think this is actually quite a niche, but as we see it now, everyone wants a Pen F. And even I'm talking about the original Pen F, not hoping for Pen F2, but people still want to buy the original Pen F. It's quite hard to find one. If you do find one, it's not cheap. So it's just one of those things that I think this is a good angle for maybe perhaps OM Systems should have another look at this market here, the pen line, whether they could revive it by bringing out maybe two models in the pen, and first maybe a Pen F2, which is slightly high end, a better build body, better weather resistant. Like you said, have a viewfinder, maybe have a 25 megapixel sensor. So that's like a kind of like a flagship, but not quite flagship in a way to the point like the OM-1 status where you can do 60 frames per second and things like that, or have a lot of different computational stuff, recognition mode. Then they have a budget line, which is kind of more like the original EPL series or EP series, which is slightly cheaper, doesn't have a viewfinder, and but it's still styled to the way that people may want to carry it, and as on a daily basis. Very low end, low budget, and it doesn't really matter whether it has a cheaper sensors or older sensors. But I think even the oldest one now, it has 20 megapixels in the lineup, and so it doesn't have 16 anymore. So anything they do is going to be 20 minimum. I think the pen line could be quite interesting and could actually bring in some numbers for the account book as well.
Well, I think so. I'd be interested to know why Olympus, as it was then, decided not to bother anymore with the pen series, and how things like the EP7 was sold. But I don't think that's been widely available globally, is it? You can buy it in the UK. I don't know whether you can buy it in the US. But when you look at the something like Sony ZV-E10, so that's a cheap vlogging camera. It's fairly crude, fairly old tech, but it's designed very specifically for that job, and
Yeah.
I think it's done pretty well for Sony. It's no different to the Pen series, whether you're talking about the EPL series or the EP7. Um, I can't help feeling that if OM System made any attempt to market that as a cheap, attractive little vlogging camera, it would probably do rather better than it has done. But this is just not. It seems to me. I wonder if these cameras have been sidelined
Yeah.
prematurely, or whether they they just
Well, I,
stop marketing. I mean, they stop marketing them, so people stop buying them. So
yeah.
then they say, well, nobody's buying them, so we won't make them. It's almost become like a situation System has created itself. Maybe not.
Yeah.
I don't know. They know the figures, I don't. But but I think it's very disappointing that such a successful little product should have
It is.
been
Well,
just
I
sidelined.
mean, not just the Pen series. I mean, like, I think I could dare to say that even the OM5 or the EM5 series would fall into that category because it's supposed to be a
Yeah,
smaller, compact form factor for people to travel with. And even
yeah,
if you see the last OM5 campaign that they had, they're still very much outdoorsy, you know. And they have the people holding
yeah,
the camera, going to the wild, and
yeah,
I think they could potentially expand it a little bit, and like you said, appealing for people who just travel to cities and it just bringing in a little
yeah,
bit of extra elements into the photography. It's not just about outdoor, not just about mountains and streams, but cities, you know, in about
yeah,
other elements of it, like street photography. Because the OM5 is perfectly capable of doing that sort of thing, and like you said, there are small primes in the OM System lineup is really good and phenomenal. You know, even the new 20mm 1.4 is quite, you know, is really good. But yeah, it's a very interesting aspect. I think that perhaps that would change in time, and or maybe expand in time to involve other photographers. I hope so. I certainly hope so, because that's what we had before. We have in the Olympus days, when we had the ambassadors in the street photography side, we have ambassadors in weddings, we have ambassadors in like different categories. But now it's all kind of very much surrounding the bird size and a very outdoor macro, and it's very focused on that. But you can see, you know, like prove me wrong. There are lots of very competent photographers out there, and I've seen time and time again when they post photos, they're using MFT gears, OM System Olympus gear. Like, they are street photographers. These are landscape photographers. They've done phenomenal jobs in these sort of areas. That means that, you know, not only that there's a market for it, but there's also, it shows that these sort of MFT cameras are still very much relative and in the modern world of photography, because people can exploit the excellent IBIS and the computational side to do all the nightscapes, astrophotography, and all the other stuff that they really do very well on. So I personally think that the pen line would kickstart, reignite that side of it if they decide to do it. Otherwise, it's going to be quite hard for the smaller line of OMD or the OM series going to continue. Like, at the moment, the OM1, you know, is doing what it does, you know, all the wildlife, professional, high-end, high-speed stuff. But the OM5 kind of like, it kind of left alone a little bit at the moment.
well, yeah. Or what about the EM10 even
Yeah,
cheaper, very
yeah.
similar form factor. I haven't heard much about that recently. I don't suppose that will ever get an update now. But of all the buying guides I've written for websites about best cameras for travel, best cameras for beginners, best cheap cameras, Olympus has always been there at the top of the list. But if they're not going to carry on developing that kind of camera, they're not going to carry on going in that kind of guide.
Well, funny you mentioned that,
That's the sad fact.
because the EM10 Mark IV has been a top seller in Japan for many years. And well, the Mark III and the Mark IV, all the
Mm,
EM10 series has always been one of the top 3 sellers in Japan, and I think it's dropped down to number 6 or 7 place last year. It's still there in the top
right.
10, but the sales has the number has dropped, and partly because I think OM System hasn't updated that particular line, so there has no
No.
OM10 or the EM10 successor, and
Well, nobody's talking about it because nothing's happened. And when people
yeah.
stop talking about stuff, people stop buying it.
Yeah, And like you mentioned, the vlogging camera is becoming a top seller in Japan, and the Sony EV10, I think EV10 and EV1, ZV, not EV.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, despite that, it still means that the EM10 line is very much alive if they decide to do something. So if they decided to suddenly update the camera, and with a little bit of updates, it doesn't need to be significant, but it needs to know that that camera still exists.
Well, yeah, quite. And I think the ZV-10 is interesting in that it's got terrific autofocus. Sony's ahead of the game there, but everything else about that camera is pretty old. I mean, it's
Yep.
not a very high bar to aim at.
No.
So it wouldn't take. I mean, I don't know. It'd be interesting to use side by side an EM10 and the ZV-E10, just to get a feel for how the video and the focusing works. I think the video quality will be quite similar. I think the Sony focusing will be as good as it always is. But everything else about that camera and so many other cameras you can get at the moment is fairly old.
I think if you're just looking at stills on the still photography side, I think the old EM10 Mark IV definitely would give Sony a run of his money, in that category.
It'd be better in the sense that it has a viewfinder, has stabilization where the Sony doesn't. For video, I mean, as a hybrid camera, that would be the interesting comparison.
That's interesting.
These swings and roundabouts, I think. But I mean, you mentioned earlier that do you think people's expectations for video are slightly unrealistic? Do you think they need a lot less than they think they need?
I think
because
so.
It seems to me that it's one of those areas where perhaps we need a bit of a reality check. So we take it for granted that 4K is the new baseline, don't we?
Yeah.
And then we think, oh, in that case, well, 4K 30 frames a second, that's a bare minimum. Really, you want 60. A 120 is a dream.
Yeah.
In fact, though, if you look at what we actually do, I think you post your YouTube stuff in 4K. Is that right?
Yep, that's right.
Do you ever need 60 FPS for some slow motion stuff? I imagine you do from time to time.
For my YouTube stuff, rarely. I do occasionally if I want to showcase something in a slightly different way. It's good to have a slow-mo option, and don't get me wrong. I think these days it's almost like a fun thing to for consumers, because now smartphone can do 4K 120 now. So it's just like it's people expectation has changed, and it's been upgraded in a way in the last few years. And like I said, ever since the smartphone can do 4K 60, then everyone think that, okay, 4K 60 is a minimum. And then when smartphone does 4K 120, okay, we got to have 4K 120 because everyone else, even the phone, can do that. I guess in a way that it's not such about whether they need it. It's just that, oh, my phone has it. Why my camera that I spend more money on can't do that? It's more about expectation. Whether they use it or not is another thing. And but in terms of features, and I say that many times, and whatever OM system cameras has now and before is more than sufficient for most people. And how many people should open gate? How many people actually use cine lenses to for videoing, and on a daily basis, or frequently, not daily basis, on a frequent basis? Not many. And how many of you care about 10-bit, 8-bit, or raw videoing? And I'm talking about in general public, not so much about professional. Not many, even though OMD can do raw video. If you attach a Atomos with via the HDMI, you can do raw video recording. But how many?
So what do we think? Do we think OM systems should stick to stills and offer video as an occasional convenience, or are we saying that video is becoming essential?
Right. In my book, let's say if I'm a consumer, and what I would like to see the next update from OM system in terms of video side, it ought to have I'm talking about the rest of the lines. Whatever update they're gonna bring up, they're gonna have a minimum 4K 60 minimum.
Yeah.
And for flagship, please bring up 4K 120, if not 4K 200. just to bring a little bit, just to speed up a little bit, and so it makes people think that okay, yeah, I can show people that I can slow motions in my camera. It's for consumers.
I mean,
it's just ticking boxes
it's
really.
this is the thing. It enables you to change the pace
Yep.
without having to drop the resolution, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Which I
Well,
guess is the key thing for filmmakers.
yeah, well, in a way, once you get to slow motion categories, like anything over 60, and you're starting to see qualities slowly degrade, and that's a fact. Even if you shoot 1080, you'll find that 1080 when you shoot 240 frames, you will find that the it become a little bit pixelated if you look closer. But that's
Even with a phone,
yeah, even with the
shooting
phone.
60 or 120, the quality starts to go.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I think from a consumer perspective, these sort of numbers is not necessary, but it's good for them to take boxes when it comes to making a decision to buying a camera or not. For most photographers, and I mean, I think they care less about the video specs of it, but if you do see it, you probably might try to use it occasionally. Like, oh, got a bird flying, or you got a deer or bear in front of you. Let's do some 4K 120 slow motion of them like having a bath in the river stream. It's kind of quite fun to do it. Not necessarily going to make a movie out of it, but it's kind of like a fun option for them to use. And at least it's there. At least it's there.
Yeah, I think the difficulty is, isn't it, that these more advanced video features, they need pretty advanced skills to actually do anything with them. And I guess were you making a point that you think some of these cameras have features that are beyond the scope of the users they're pitched at? Yeah. I mean, I sometimes think that log profiles are kind of quite borderline. You would have to be heavily into post-production and be halfway to being a professional colorist to get proper value out of log profiles. And it's only if you're going to shoot log that you really need 10-bit capture, to be fair. Otherwise, just shoot an 8-bit and make sure you get the exposure right. And the right balance.
And for those who may not understand bit rates, and to be quite honest, for those who like to post stuff or become want to be a content creators on YouTube's, and quite frankly, even if you 10-bit or 12-bit videos, you're not going to see the difference once you upload it, because everything's compressed so much that you'll be lucky to see anything, to be honest, or any differences.
If you're not doing any serious color grading, I'd be very surprised if you could see a difference.
Yeah.
I mean, my YouTube stuff I always submit in 1080 because that's what the people I do the work for publish. But it's quite useful to shoot in 4K because you can then do a bit of panning and cropping and a bit of a kind of draw attention to a particular part of the screen or a particular area of the scene. Without losing quality if you shoot in 4K. I don't think I'd ever shoot in anything higher than 4K. It doesn't seem much point at the moment. But I think frame rates are significant, and I think there have been a lot of cameras come out which do 4K 60, but often with such a heavy crop that you lose all your continuity because your angle of view has changed.
I think maybe in a way that people are expecting too much on the video side for today's cameras, but lucky, and I guess most of the OM system and the Olympus camera users are never really too bothered about the video side anyway. But having said that, as well as I want OM system to do well myself, it would be good to have a little bit of upgrade in the video side. It's just bringing an option for people who may not have heard of OM system or use any MFT system to have at least a consideration point to have a look at. And I mean, like you said earlier, it is unfortunate these days when people are deciding to buy a camera or trying to try a brand, they would they not only they look at the still specifications and the sensors, but they also want to look at what video specs does it have. I mean, this, even though they're not videographers themselves, they still look at it to see whether it has an option.
Don't quite know. I mean, a lot of consumers have this dream of becoming influencers or content creators or YouTubers or what have you. Very often people buy gear not on the basis of what they need now, but on the basis of what they think they might need in the future. Or they might buy something that does video and think, now I can be a videographer. Not quite that simple, of course, but I think people are often dreaming about the future when they choose these things. So it is important to have the potential to do things,
Yeah.
even if you don't currently do them.
Yeah. So let's just summarize this. Okay. I'm gonna have my say. I'm gonna have you can have your say. Do you think the OM-1 Mark II is a good upgrade?
From what?
From the OM-1.
Right.
Okay.
You're asking me, or are you
Yes.
putting
Yes.
it out
I'm gonna have my say after you. So it's just so we have a different point of view.
For me, no, because if I had an OM-1, I would have spent quite a lot of money on it not long ago, because it's not been out a very long time. And I wouldn't want to spend a whole lot of money all over again for a marginal improvement. So for what I do, it wouldn't be a benefit. I would like the bigger buffer, but realistically, I don't use the buffer I've got. I would like the outdoor ND grad, but realistically, that's, for occasional use, not something I'd need all the time. My understanding is that the improved IBIS is improved algorithms rather than any physical change to the IBIS unit. So adding all these things up, I personally would not upgrade from the Mark 1 to the Mark II.
Okay. Right. Understood. For me, I think it is a good upgrade for those who need it. And only because I'm only saying this only because I have met a few photographers who complained about the OM-1 before. And I can completely understand their frustration with the OM-1. There are two types of people who I met who had the OM-1 and complained about it. One is a couple of people I know that are making YouTube videos with the OM-1, and they kept telling me how unreliable with their autofocus is when they film themselves. And but they already invested in a lot of MFT lenses, some of the OM system lenses. And another group is the wildlife group, which I saw that they do a lot of high-speed photographing. And they also praise about how G9 Mark the G9 Mark II behaved when it was first launched, and they looked at the videos and looked at the some of the reviews, and they tried the camera out. So I think for those who use these sort of specifications that OM system has brought out for the Mark II, would definitely appreciate and perhaps even tempted to get the sell the original OM-1 and get the Mark II, all because of things I just said. The AF is definitely better, and then the buffer is now good enough, if not better, than a lot of the systems out there. For myself, and because first of all, I don't do high-speed shooting, so the double buffer thing doesn't really concern me too much. But the live grad ND, which I said earlier already, I really love, and I do use it, not on a daily basis, but quite often that I do use, want to use ND in London, and also the improved autofocus is definitely better if I want to photograph anyone human, anyone with a face or something. So because of the new algorithm is definitely better and feels significantly accurate and more accurate, and also stickier to the subject I'm trying to follow. From that, just that few points alone is already good enough for me. In terms of operational side of it, people may not actually appreciate this, but the front dial, this is the front dial here, is actually a lot better than the original OM-1, which I I did complain about before. Not on videos or anything like that. So this is the original, and I actually put some WD-40 to the front dial. I sprayed on it because it was so tough to turn, and and it's got weather seal. It's not going to harm too much, but I'm just trying to lubricate a little bit so I can turn the front dial. It was stiff to that point. I find it quite hard to use without gloves. So the Mark II, then from what I understand, they have done something to it. So the Mark II front dial is now quite a bit smoother and easy to turn, which brings me back to the olden Olympus day, because I know the EM1X front dial has a very similar feel to this OM-1 Mark II now. It's very nice and smooth, very clicky and responsive. And as a guy who changes settings quite often, and that wheel is important for me. I know this is small things, definitely small things, but is as a guy who's photographed a lot, like myself, and these little things could make a big difference on a daily basis. So for me, it's a good update. It's very specific updates, I think, to address some concerns that people who really use the OM-1 had. But again, let me just reinforce that people who already have the OM-1, I don't think you need to upgrade unless you feel whatever I said or in my review that matters to you. The double buffer. If you need that sort of frame rate, a number of frames to be captured at any one time, yeah, then the Mark II is significant. The live grade ND, if you do a lot of landscape, you might find it quite useful. If you go out to do a lot of this type of photography, you may find it useful. The improved AF, well, if you do a lot of portrait, if you do a lot of self-filming, you like to be a content creator on YouTube, and using OM system kits already have a lot of gear, the OM Mark II makes sense because, yeah, it's improved significantly. It just works, so it's actually a lot better than the OM-1. But otherwise, and I think the OM-1 is still a significant camera that will serve you many years to come. I don't think the update is targeted for a mass market out there. It's targeting for newcomers and also for people who had problems with the original version.
Can you answer a question for me, Jimmy, regarding the IBIS? There seems to be some disagreement about whether it's an algorithm change or a hardware change. Now, I think I asked that question specifically in a press briefing, and I was told it was an algorithm update. Do you know different?
Well, I can't answer that simply because I don't think I've been briefed in that technical aspect of it. But in terms of the use, I did put the camera side by side and to test it myself. I couldn't quite see the difference. And to be quite honest, ever since that when we reached the 7-stop EV IBIS in the Mark III era, I starting to ignore the improvement because we're getting to a RAM that we can't see the difference anymore, and it has to be very specific. Perhaps it make a huge difference when you're throwing a big lens on it and a very narrow view kind of lenses. Then you start to notice the difference.
I did make a discovery the other day, by the way, not related to OM system, but might have some relevance. Yep. I've often complained to anyone who listen about the very indifferent IS on some of my Canon lenses.
Yep.
But I found that when I switched the camera from mechanical to electronic shutter, it was dramatically improved. So it occurs to me that maybe you will get more effective IBIS with the electronic shutter than you will with a mechanical shutter. That's not really relevant to what we're discussing, but I thought I'd mention it because it's something that seems to make a difference on other systems.
Yeah, and I literally just done a side-by-side comparison with the OM-1 Mark II and the latest ZF, and it's quite interesting to see the difference between them because they both quoted 8 stop of IBIS. I know the OM-1 Mark II can go 8, was it 8.5 stop? I can't remember exactly the number, but it's over 8 stop, let's put it that way. And the ZF also has 8 stop on paper, but when you put them side by side, they behave so different, like between the two formats. It's almost shocking to see them how much more stable the Micro Four Thirds IBIS is compared to full frame. Even though on paper they both have 8 EVs of IBIS compensation, but in reality, when you start using it, it's a totally different story.
It's always up to 8 EV, isn't it? That's always the best case with specific lenses and specific cameras with specific settings. I think the whole IS testing business needs
well, not only that,
salt, really.
If everybody and Olympus fans, you may actually recall that Olympus made this statement years ago saying that they can't go past 8 stop of IBIS, and anything go past 8 stop is defying physics. That's what they said at the time, and now we have 8.5 stop. So we've gone past the 8 EV kind of that line there, and I personally think, like I said before, even when they first announced a 7 stop IBIS, I already think is it's good enough. It's good for most. I can't use that sort of stabilization even in videos in with slightly longer lenses. I mean, I've used the 7-stop with the 300 f4 pro lens, and I find it to be more than sufficient. I haven't tried it with the latest 600 lens, and I only use it on the OM-1 Mark II and the OM-1 Mark I. Both are perfectly fine. You know, the OM-1 has a half a stop less IBIS, but it's still, you know, perfectly fine. I don't see any differences there. I think we are reaching the limit of what IBIS can do. I think what we can see the difference, or we can feel the difference. I mean, I can't see next year we're going to have a 9-stop IBIS or 10-stop IBIS from anyone. It's going to be ridiculous.
Yeah, but you don't get 7, 8, or 9 stops anyway. Those are idealized figures in perfect circumstances. And
Yep.
the point about stabilization testing is it's all done by Systme using machine programmed with algorithms to represent what Systme thinks is typical human hand-holding movement. And for all we know, the camera makers are told exactly how the machine works and what algorithms it uses,
Yeah.
and are invited to choose the lenses they test and the circumstances they're tested in. So 7 stops or 8 stops or 9 stops is a maximum under very specific circumstances. In the real world, I think you're doing well to get half of that.
Oh yeah. I mean,
I've gone off topic. Sorry.
No. It's fine, and because there is obviously one of the selling point of the OM Mark II is the new IBIS and a new enhanced IBIS. I'm technically, I'm not entirely sure whether it's hardware or algorithm. I'm not too sure. I think I saw one comment earlier. They said Dex Smith from the OM System UK actually said it's a new hardware. So maybe he knows better than me, because obviously he's a technical guy, so he should be able to confirm that. But for me, I'm a user, so like I just think that it's as good as ever. That's all I can say. I can't say the difference now between 8.5 and 8-stop or even 7-stop, because they all look very similar to me nowadays. It's really hard to tell the difference even with longer lenses. Speaking of which, let's go to the lens discussion, because let me bring it up, because it is quite a thing here, and you guys can see this. So people might say that this thing is big, and it is heavy, it is big, but I don't think it's big in a sense that it's a long zoom. So like, let's put it that way. So like, for a long zoom, I don't think it's that big. And just for size comparison, I have the old the M.Zuiko 135 to 100 f2. Right, let's do it right here. So this is the original 35 to 100 f2 zoom from Olympus. So if I take out the lens hood, so you can see the actual size of the thing, and so this is the size of the lens. So let me just take out the hood from the 150 to 600, so you can see the side-by-side comparison. I mean, I used to use this 35 to 100 f2 a lot for portrait, and ever since I got the 40 to 150 2.8, I use that more than this one. But it's still here because I love this lens. So just to give you a little bit of side comparison here, in terms of length, there's not much difference there. Obviously, it's chunkier, it's slightly wider, but it's not big at all. I think this lens is quite an interesting lens in many ways. First of all, it overlaps a lot of what OM System or Olympus currently have in terms of focal length, and it also, quite funny enough, is now becoming the longest lens in the lineup, more than the white beast, the 150 to 400 with the 1.25 teleconverters built in. That lens is phenomenal, but it cost about $7,000 to buy. This lens is actually quite a bit cheaper, and I think personally it's a good lens. I'm not entirely sure how everybody feels about it, but for the time that I have it, and I've been using this lens quite often, which is kind of surprising, and considering that I'm not a wildlife guy, and I'm most likely shooting portraits and people. But I do, every time I go out for a walk in a park, I actually take this lens out and starting to look for birds, look for things as small or far away, just trying to use this lens to see if I can get something. it kind of reignite my curiosity in a way, and that didn't happen before when I was testing the 100 to 400, nor the 300 FO Pro, only because of that reach that I couldn't see before, or couldn't have that before, and the 600 is quite significant, which in full frame is 12,000, so it's quite a long lens.
1,200. 12,000.
1,200.
Yeah.
And I even normally I'd hate photographing the moon because I'm not a moon guy. So I actually use the lens to see how close I can get to the moon. And I can actually get very, very close to the moon.
So that lens is so long, you practically bumped the moon with it. It's actually can you tell us how much it is?
I think it's 2,300 or £2,000. I can't quite remember exactly how much it is. I mean, people obviously know more than me, and probably in the comment section you can say that.
I mean, it's a big lens, but try making a small 600mm. Then you really will run up against the laws of physics. I think it's always going to be big. Even Canon 600 and 800 f11 lenses, they're bigger than that. I know they're
f11, right? They're f11, f8 lenses.
No, I know it's not quite the same thing, but a 600mm lens, it's going to be big. What are you going to do?
Yeah,
it's you either accept a big lens or you don't have it.
I know, and to be honest, I mean, I know there are some discussions about the lens itself. I could get the same 150-600 focal length lens together with a very high resolution full frame cameras and crop in to get the same image. In theory, that is true, because obviously a sensor's being cropped is you can crop the image out to get a similar sort of depth of field, similar sort of thing. But it's the shooting side of it that's very, very different in my perspective. And imagine, let's say that I have a full frame lens, so I use a 600mm focal length and pointing to a bird in the distance. All you see is that the bird is a tiny dot in the frame. Well, obviously, when you're looking into the viewfinder from an MFT lens, an MFT camera with a 600mm lens, you get a much closer look to the actual animal. So that will give you not only the benefit of actually checking whether that is what you want to see, and also in terms of the shooting side of it, the whole experience of getting close is very, very different to cropping an image and trying to shoot wide and crop in later on, and you won't get the same thing. Certainly from an execution point of view.
Just to clarify, are you saying that there's a suggestion people are making that you could shoot full frame, then crop down to that size? Just as a quick reality check there, if you still want the same resolution in the cropped size, you're looking at a full frame sensor of 15 megapixels plus. So you're looking at something like the Sony A1, which is $6,500. Actually, it's come down a bit. It's only $6,000 now.
Yeah.
So if you're seriously proposing using a full frame camera and cropping to the MFT size, but you still want the same resolution, that's a lot of money. Alternatively, if you don't mind having 10 megapixel images, you can do it. But I think the whole argument's strange and not really supportable.
And I have a lot of messages suggesting that, and I could get a new Canon, high-res Canon or Nikon or Sony, and then crop down the frame and get the shot.
$4,500 or pounds, if that's what you want to do. Alternatively, you can pay half that and not have to crop. It's an odd argument.
Yeah, I think in theory they talk about very much in theory terms and about cropping an image. But like I said, I think cropping an image while you're shooting it, have the crop in mind, is very, very difficult in terms of trying to catch a moment, for instance. Like I said, if the animal is from a far distance, no matter how you look at it, it's very hard for you to see through the viewfinder or the back screen, unless you do magnifications. But if you're starting to involving extra step when you shoot, because you want to magnify in the viewfinder to see exactly what's going on before you click the shutter button, and then having to think that I'm going to crop this image in that sort of a scenario, and you're having trouble of actually photographing it because you are involving a lot of things. Not only making the camera and the whole setup more expensive besides the point, but in terms of shooting, it's going to be a very, very different thing altogether. By having a lens that will physically, optically give you that reach is the way to go. It's almost like we're going back to the fundamentals of photography. If you can't get close enough, then you walk closer. It's that sort of thing.
I think the only thing I think you can put in favor of taking a larger format cropping approach is if you are dealing with the subject moving very, very erratically, and it's very difficult to keep it in the right place in the frame or even in the frame at all.
Yep.
Then cropping later could work. But then again, if you're shooting at 10 frames a second, and then every frame is somewhere different, you're facing a lot of post-production work.
Yeah, absolutely. But what I can say is that for those who we talk about stills, but in terms of video, this lens is phenomenal for close-up videos for wildlife. If you are a wildlife filmmaker, this lens is actually very valuable. Because okay, people may think that photography you can crop. Let's put it that way. Okay, photography you can crop, but how about video? Right. If you want a 4K image that close, with all the details, when you can't get close to the animal, you need that focal length to get close to that animal. This format with that lens is the only option. You don't have a 16K video options at the moment and crop in. You don't have it, and then it's simply not working. So if you got a full frame camera, yeah, I can do 8K video. I can get 8K with the 600mm lens, but if you crop, you're not going to get the same reach. You're not going to see the same detail.
Has anyone here tried editing 8K video? I mean, realistically, you're going to have to do it with unless you've got some kind of extremely high-end workstation, you're going to have to do it with proxies at a much lower resolution. And then that becomes rather more difficult to figure out when you're cropping in tight with a proxy, whether the quality is there or not. I mean, the whole thing becomes a bit of a mess if you try and do that with video, I think.
Yeah. Let's see that Angela had a comment there. I just saw that OM-1 Mark II with the OM system 150-400, which is the big lens, may seem expensive than the Sony A1 with 100-500.
I don't quite understand the.
I think it's just. I think he's doing a price comparison there between the two lenses. But then again, I can see you're comparing the focal length there, and but we are looking at the angular views and the reach, and the 150-400. Obviously, you are going to get about 300 to 800 equivalent in terms of angular views and the reach. So the Sony A1 won't give you that, and you need to use 2x converter to get anywhere close. And so this is another thing. Once you're adding a 2x converter to get that, then you're starting to lose optical quality because you're throwing in another optics there. And anyone who uses teleconverters will tell you that 2x converters may not always be the good case when you want the ultimate image quality, because whatever brand it is, I always think that the 2x converters is only for use in emergency cases if you really want to get that reach. But most likely, I try not to use any teleconverters if I can avoid it. But if I do, I tend to use the 1.4 than the 2x, because the 1.4 tend to give you more or less 90-95% of optical quality from the lens. But anything 2x, you are starting to run into a little bit of trouble. Not only that, is you also slow down the AF a little bit as well, because you're starting to get less light because of the 2x crop, and then you get the equivalent aperture is going to go down by literally half. So you are losing a little bit of performance there as well. So it's not actually a good way to get to compare like this. It's very much an orange and apple situation.
Yeah. Indeed. I mean, without getting too deeply into price comparisons, I just can't see the sense in buying an extremely high resolution 4-frame camera to get 15 or 20 megapixel images.
Yeah. And Terry also doing the same thing, same comparison there too. Like the E-mount Sigma, I think he's referring to, is £1,000. So, and the Sony is 200 to 600, Nikon 180 to 600 are cheaper. Yeah, but we are
the
looking
cameras you would need to put them on for this to work are very expensive, and also they're cheaper. They're also like consumer level lenses.
Yeah, but not only that,
you would not want to crop the results.
We just talked about the reach as well, like you said. Rod said earlier, you need a high megapixel camera, even if you want to crop to get the image same frame or same image as the Micro Four Third. You need a significant high res a camera to do that. And if, let's say, and you are one of those bird photographers and who needs speed, and you all know that all the full frame cameras, the speed demons are all 20-24 megapixels. All the high res cameras are not made for speed. They're all made for details.
The A1 is fast, but 50 megapixels might not be enough for this to work. The A7R5 and the A7R4 are 61, which is probably marginal for this theory, but they don't really have the frame rate or the buffer capacity to be high speed specialists. I think it's an argument. I can understand the point of this comparison, and it certainly does seem to be in favor of the larger format that you have the potential to crop, but you do need the resolution to go with that. And if you are going to crop in to that extent that you're replicating the field of view of an MFT sensor, you're not going to want to do that with an affordable consumer lens on full frame. You're going to need a seriously good full frame lens that can withstand that kind of cropping. That's just my feeling about it.
And also IBIS. We haven't talked about IBIS too. Like on a full frame body, IBIS work very differently. So when you're throwing a 600 lens on it, you actually find that you need a very, very, very fast shutter speed to mitigate any sort of movements. And
one of the issues is that IBIS with very long lenses, I can't speak from any experience with MFT, only larger formats. It becomes very jerky, so that the IBIS can compensate for your movement, but these movements are magnified. So if you're using a very long lens, I've tried the Canon 800 f11, which has got very effective IBIS, but you're looking through the viewfinder, you're trying to frame a shot, and the IBIS doesn't smoothly do this. It jumps because its corrections are magnified by the focal length of the lens. So it can actually be very hard to keep things in the frame with a very long lens, depending on how smooth and subtle the IBIS is.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely experienced that. Even with the MFT on the 600 lens, it's good. You see in my video, I have some clips with the birds in full 600mm, which is perfectly fine. But when I do pan, you do see the occasional stutter, only because the sensor is reaching its limit in terms of compensation. So imagine that time. I mean, that sort of movement being 10 times worse on the full frame, which I can guarantee that you will see that in a full frame camera when you're reaching that sort of focal length. And it's going to be very hard to do any sort of tracking shots, because you're trying to move the camera, trying to trace a bird and trying to move around with it. You find yourself like constantly trying to readjust or having some motion sickness by the end of it, because everything's just jumping all over the place.
Yeah. I see in the comments people are addressing the elephant in the room, which is the Lumix G9 II. But I think Greg has made a couple of points about that, which are quite relevant. The OM-1 Mark II is a different camera to the Lumix G9 II. They appear to be aiming at the same kind of high-speed market, but they're not the same camera, and you have to choose the one which suits you best, I think.
Well, I can say that from a wildlife photography point of view, obviously I can't speak for any because I'm not professionally I am one, and the viewfinder plays a big part if you do use the viewfinder a lot, and the slightly high res, not slightly, actually quite a bit high res, and the OM-1 makes quite a big difference actually when you see details and in a big long zoom like this, and you can actually be more certain in situations where you think that it's in focus, with tracking is in focus. When I use the G9 Mark II, in normal situations, I would say it's more than perfectly fine. But when I do, let's say if I do some a long tele when I was testing the 150 to 600, I do find that using the clearer viewfinder is easy for me just to check things that it's been focused correctly. And I can rely on the system, but because I was testing the AF as well, so I want to make sure that it is actually locking on. So the viewfinder does give me that better assurances just because it's clearer. I know that it's in focus, while the G9 Mark II EVF is not high res enough for me to tell when the subject is slightly smaller in the frame and whether it's been locking on or not. The box is there, but then it's just not quite having that confidence for me to say, okay, that's in focus. Now, obviously, I can check it afterward, but then again, you will lose the moment. You're missing a shot.
Yeah, I think ultimately we just have to go with what works for us. We're all individuals. We all have different kind of hand-eye coordination and expectations. What works for one won't work for another. I think that I trying to pronounce this properly. Systme Naturae.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Latin, that would be, wouldn't it? Asking OM-1 and 150 to 400 versus Sony A1 with 200 to 600 and 1.4 times converter. Without testing them side by side, it'd be quite difficult to say which is best. But I think any reasonable person would go with the Sony, but then that is an extremely expensive proposition. And I'm not sure I would necessarily want to put a 1.4 converter on the Sony, but somebody who's used it and says it's good, that's fine. That's fine. But I think you can compare a full frame setup used as it's intended against an MFT setup used as it's intended. I simply can't get my head around this suggestion that you could use a full frame setup to mimic the crop factor of MFT. That seems a bit crazy to me, but yeah, maybe I've said enough about that.
Yeah, I actually find it quite interesting, and this whole discussion today. So no offense to anyone, but it's quite an interesting look at how people responded to now using full frame a setup to mimic, like you said, Rod, mimic what MFT can do. And equally, we had discussions before when MFT trying to mimic what full frame can do into the depth of field.
Yeah,
it's kind of like a two-way things, right? And what that tells us is that each format has its own merit. Each format has its own target angle.
I think let's be honest about this. We all feel loyalty towards certain brands and formats, and we'll argue in their favor against other brands that we don't hold in the same high regard. So I think a lot of these arguments come from owner loyalty as much as any kind of technical advantages and pros and cons. Just my 2 pence. Hope I haven't started something.
No, it's fine. I mean, like I said, because of my relationship with OM System, and I obviously have a slightly different view on certain things. But then when you become an ambassador, obviously you believe in the products, you believe in the brand. So
yeah, of course,
it has a slightly different view on things. But I always say in my reviews and always say in live chats, like what we're doing right now, is that I'm a professional. I'm a photographer. I look at things quite very often objectively, like I say, I don't just use MFT. I have other key as well. I have other brands. I have Panasonic. I have GX6 and G9 Mark II in my arsenal of gear. I mean, they are for specific purposes. They're filming and do other things, but OM System is always going to be here to do a lot of stuff that I enjoy to do, like travels and vloggings and something like that. I do use that system a lot, and even like my old Leica, I still use my old Leica. So it's something that I think we spoil choices these days as photographers, and we shouldn't get too serious about comparisons like this. And because if you have OM-1, if you love it, is a great camera. And then if you just bought in the new lens, and you know, I don't really care what other people say. You know, this is the lens that can do whatever you want him to do. I'm enjoying the 150 to 600 because I've never ever had a 600 lens before. Well, when I say 600, I mean equivalent is 1200. Imagine if I have a full frame. I don't have a 1200 lens in like ever. Imagine the excitement when I got the lens, because I'm seeing something that I've never seen before when I look through the viewfinder. I'm that much closer to something that I don't usually see. So like one of the shot that I took and in my review of the lens is that is one of the robins on a tree. I've never ever took that shot like that before because I couldn't get close enough. I mean, I could crop an image, but then it's slightly different, right? Now I can actually physically see through the viewfinder with that bird so big in the frame, which is a very eye-opening experience. And this is the experience I'm talking about now. When you have a full frame, you may have a 600 lens on, but if you throw in the same system, 600 lens on a Micro Four Thirds, because it gives you the equivalent angle of view of only 2.1 degree, which is very narrow, which means that the subject is so much bigger in the viewfinder. You get that experience of getting so much closer. And when you do that, you reignite your passion or even curiosity that, oh, what else can I find? You know, because I've never done it. You know, all my life, I've been shooting at max 300mm, which is the one that I don't even own, the 300mm f4 Pro. So equivalent 600. And Rod has tried some of the long lenses before, you know, but so he can tell you experience or two. But I've never ever owned anything. So that's why when this lens came out, I was really all over the place because I've never tried anything like this before. So when I looked at the price, okay, it may sound expensive, $2,000, over $2,000 for the lens, but then again, it's cheaper than the other lens that is long, the other long lens that Olympus has, which is the 150 to 400, which is $7,000. You know, I don't think I can justify spending $7,000 for something I can't make any return, right?
No,
but
no.
For this lens, yeah.
I have always felt that that lens was rather expensive myself.
You think so? I think it's but I think all the lens built to that sort of caliber is they are rivaling the Canon wide lenses, you know, in the top end for sports and stuff like that, which is costing easily $12,000 to $15,000.
Yeah, but then these are very fast super telephoto primes. They're not the same. They're not quite the same thing. I mean, maybe I suppose it isn't expensive when you consider that it's almost a constant aperture lens, but it's the 300 f4 that always sticks in my mind as being the best example of an MFT super telephoto.
Yep. But you know, anyway, the 150-600, and let me know in the comment section and to see what your views on it. I know many of you are still comparing between the full frame equivalents and this particular lens here. If you haven't tried this lens or haven't tried anything this long, you don't have to buy it. You don't have to trust me. And if you can go to one of those OM system events and have the hands-on with the lens, I do encourage you to try it because it's fun and it's really, really fun. And if you can also try to get the same equivalent, if you like to compare, just for the sake of experience, go into any camera store, see if you can get hold of one of these 150-600 lenses on the shelf, and try to use one of those full frame cameras, whatever brand, and see if you can get similar sort of experience. I can say that it's going to be very, very different. I'm not talking about depth of field and things like. Obviously, there's still the argument and full frame is always going to give you shallower depth of field or the look of it. And but we all know that, as you know, as an MFT photographer, it's all depending on compositions, how you play with the distances between foreground and background, and you can always get some really nice, clean look of the subject that you want to photograph. It's all about compositions at the end of the day and execution. So I'm not too worried about that at all. And for in the right hands, any MFT lenses can achieve great results. And similarly on the full frame side, in the wrong hands, even you have the medium format, you may not even get a great shot. And so it's that same argument all the time. It's all about how photographer adapts to different formats and systems and scenarios and adjust your skill levels to suit. hence, it's a good thing to try, and we are spoiled with choices these days, so that's a good thing.
So I think the 7.5 grand telephoto we're talking about is the 150 to 400 f4.5, isn't it?
Yeah.
With a built-in 1.25 teleconverter.
Yep.
That is one serious lens.
That is.
I'm not aware of any other constant aperture super telephoto zooms, never mind any with a built-in converter. But that aside, there's also the 100 to 400. That doesn't cost a fortune. I'm not sure how good it is, but that's not really very expensive, and that's equivalent to 200 to 800. So
yeah, when
it's
that
not
lens
like
first
there's no
came out,
choice.
it was quite popular as well. But at the same time, Panasonic also had the 100 to 400 as well, which both companies make the same focal length lenses. All I can say is that if you already own the 100 to 400 and use it, and I can tell you straight away right now, because I've used that lens before, is that this 150 to 600 is significantly sharper and more detailed than the 100 to 400. So yeah, it is more expensive, but I think it's worth it because you do get the performance out of it. Plus the bonus is not only is compatible with all the teleconverters in Olympus, but also Sync IS, which is a good thing. You can use the anybody's, even the older or EM1 Mark II, even Mark 1 still works with the Sync IS. You may not get the same performance as the OM-1 or OM-1 Mark II, but you still have the benefit of the Sync IS, which works in tandem with the lens IS together. To give you extra half a stop or 1 stop. I think it's 1 stop of stabilization. So in a long tele lens like this, that extra 1 stop is significant.
Yeah. Interesting.
So that's good.
I'd be interesting to read the reviews, and I think probably after this I'll have a look to see what people have said about the 100 to 400, which isn't especially dear. But then I have used that's not one of the Olympus Pro lenses, is it?
No.
The 100 400. The non-pro lenses are not really in the same caliber, I don't think, as the pro lenses. But anyway.
Yeah, I'm just reading the comment there. Greg, I think Greg is discussing about the 100 to 400 Panasonic Leica and the Olympus 100 to 400. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know who else has used them. I have tried both. Panasonic.
I think what confuses the issue. I think what confuses things is it takes a certain amount of skill and practice to handle long telephotos.
Yes.
It's something I've done plenty of, but I'm not particularly good at it. And I know that where I've messed things up or not got a good shot, half the time it's me and not the lens. So it does require a certain amount of ability to get the most out of these lenses. You can't just pick them up and shoot like you can with a regular lens.
No. Absolutely. I mean, I highlighted in my video saying that, when you're shooting that long, and there are other factors starting to get involved now. It's no longer your basic photography skill, like, oh, I know how to compose the photos. Oh, I know how to adjust the exposure triangle. I know how to frame, whatever, It's actually beyond that now. When you get to that sort of zone, that sort of focal length, you're starting to have to worry about the air quality, how clear it is, the atmospheric pressure, the distortions, everything comes into play. I realized only when I starting to go that far and then starting to shoot a lot of birds across the lake, and I realized that there are some distortion there. It's not the lens, it's actually the atmospheric distortions happening, a lot of haze going, and it's creating that sort of effect, making the image look a little bit weird or unsharp. It's not about the lens, it's actually everything is other
the atmospheric conditions.
So like there are also other things as well, like you said already, like certain skills needs to be employed to be able to get this lens to operate correctly. And I find that when I was trying to do some burst in flight photography with the 150 to 600, I find it extremely difficult to use it at 600 because you only got two degree of viewing angle. It's so narrow to the point that if the bird just fly off the frame, the viewfinder momentarily, you're trying to you're trying to get it back, it's impossible because you just don't know where the bird flies, and then you move a little bit, all you see is a tiny window in the sky, so it's very, very hard to track. And that's why I used another gadget called the dot sight. I don't know if you heard of it. And it's a very useful tool, actually.
It's like a finder scope in astronomy.
A sniper.
Because because the angle of view is so narrow, you can't figure out where you're looking. You need a wider angle of view to pinpoint where to point the camera.
Yep.
In a funny kind of way.
Yeah, it's interesting that I've never used that before, but OM System sent that to me as well just to test the lens on, because they know that I have limited skills, so that thing will help you. Okay, I'll give it a go. It did help me actually, and in a good way, because I just can't manage to track a subject with 600 million, because it's just impossible. It's just too hard to do it. And imagine if you want to throw in a teleconverters in, if you put in a 2 times converter, that 2 degree becomes 1 degree. It's a needle. It's a needle in the sky.
Yeah.
So it's impossible to do anything.
It is that's one of the difficulties of extreme telephoto photography.
Yep.
It's quite difficult to put the subject in a frame where you want it to be if it's moving.
Yeah, I think someone just mentioned, oh, you zoom out to get the bird back in frame. Yeah, but then you talk about moments. You zoom out and zoom back in again. I think you do lose that timing, and then you do lose a lot of the actions there if you're trying to photograph a specific time. And I tried that in the past when even with my 40 to 150 sometimes, and I zoom out and zoom back in again. Imagine doing that with a 600 is 10 times worse. It's just really hard to do that.
Yeah. So yeah, there is a good deal of skill. Very often it's easier to blame the lens when it's not the lens.
Someone said the dot finder is super. Someone uses that. That's good to hear. That's good to hear. It's not just me then. Use a dot sight. Yeah, everyone just okay, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, I find the dot sight to be quite useful with long lenses like this, and I'm trying to use more of this 150 to 600, and I'm currently tempted to actually get one myself, just because I always fancy that 150 to 400 f4.5, but that's $7,000, so I'm definitely not going to spend $7,000 on it. And this is, within reaching distance that I could have some fun, if I'm just walking around local parks, or even like going on a track, something like maybe just trying to spot something in a while. And it's a fun lens, I think, that helped me to get away from what I do on a daily basis, which is portrait. Because sometimes you want something slightly different, right? When you do that on a day in, day out, and a frequent thing that I do, if you want to break away from what I do on the for a job and trying something different. I mean, I'm not really a macro guy, and I've tried the 60, I tried the 90. I just couldn't get into that. But the long lens, on the other hand, I find it quite fun to actually to do, more like an exploration. I want to see what's in the wild. I want to see what's lurking behind the bushes there, and is there any things that I want to see, which I don't normally have that chance.
Don't go around the park with this telephoto lens looking in bushes, Jimmy. That can only end badly. But Andrew says quite rightly, it's a lot easier, these focal lengths, with a gimbal head on a tripod, or it's just very difficult to shoot a handheld at this magnification.
Yeah, I mean, although having said that, like I said, I'm not a very skilled long-range photographer. But then when you see like some of the OM System ambassadors or any other wildlife photographers, they do handhold their lenses in that long, and not often, but they do sometimes, and they still manage to capture something. Of course, their skill levels is off the chart, they're used to it. But for any third part, like people who are just dabbling into this long range photography, you might find yourself in a very different situations, and that's something that you may not expect. You might also find yourself like get quite tired after a while, because I may be in the wrong posture, and you're holding the lens. Maybe I'm just using the wrong muscles to do things. But yeah, I think I'm slowly getting into that and trying to get excited again with this sort of thing. And maybe I will consider getting one myself, just to try myself in a different genre of photography.
You might even become an Olympus wildlife ambassador.
Oh no! Don't tell that. It would take me years to do that sort of thing. Plus, I live in London. I don't have any wildlife like what other people have access to. They have
pigeons.
They have pigeon. I can become the pigeons and parakeets a portrait photographer. Yeah, I like that. I like that. But anyway, that besides the point. I would like to hear your view about a couple of things that we talked about today. The OM-1 Mark II and the new lens. I know there's already huge discussions going on there, and you guys seems to be talking among yourselves, which is good. But if you have any specific things you would like to talk to us about and maybe ask a few questions, we are very happy to try to answer it. And
two new lenses.
Two new lenses. Yeah, that's right. That's another one, right? The 9 to 8.
The other one
is it 9 to 18?
Yeah, Mark II.
Mark II,
which
Mark
is
II.
The 9 to 18 Mark I.
Yeah,
really.
Has anyone? I just want to ask in the audience here: has anyone used that 9 to 18 before? I just want to hear from your perspective, from your experience. Is that a good lens? Because I actually personally haven't used that lens before. I'm curious to ask OM System to loan me one just to try it out, because I've never tried that little lens before. It looks very small. It looks very, very small. I already have wide angle lenses like the 8 to 25 f4 Pro and the 7 to 14 2.8 Pro. So I already have the focal length, but I would like to see whether this tiny lens is good or not, because obviously from the size perspective, if I want to, let's say, go out for a trek, if I want to, if I just want to have an OM5 body with me, or EM5, it's a small body. So these small lenses seems to make more sense than having a bigger lens, and so it might be worthwhile having a look. And if you guys are interested, let me know as well, and maybe I'll bring in the Mark II, just have a look at that and report back to you guys. But I would like to hear from you, all of you whoever have used this lens before, to tell me whether this is a good lens or not. Because I know in the MFT world, ultra wide zoom lenses are not. We don't have that many options. I know Panasonic has one.
There is in no other brand any lens, any wide zoom lens this small.
Right.
I mean, this goes back to the early days of Olympus, and these retracting lenses do feel a bit plasticky and rickety, but they work. I can't remember if I've used a 9 to 18 or not. I think I haven't. I've handled it, but I'm not sure I've got any shots with it. But there are no wide zooms as small as this anywhere else. The Panasonic one isn't very big, but it's twice the size of the Olympus.
Right. Peter Butt actually replied he had it and sold it after a month. It's very light and flimsy.
It is light and flimsy, yeah. But I'm not sure I particularly liked it. But I think probably at the time I didn't realize this was the only small wide angle zoom there would ever be. I should have hung on to it.
Right. And Joe also said that, and he has the 9 to 18 Panasonic Leica lens. Sorry, the 8 to 18 2.8 Panasonic. And he said the 9 to 18 is not as sharp in the corners, which possibly because it's not a pro lens. It's not. It's not a pro lens. So I can see that the optic is not going to be as good as the bigger lens. That's for sure.
I think it's probably like the 14 to 42 EZ lens. It's you accept a certain loss of image quality in exchange for the size. I think that's just how it's going to be.
Yeah, guys, just listen. Yeah, we can't have everything, right? if we can have everything, imagine having the size of the 9 to 18, but it's a 2.8 constant aperture, fully weather sealed, metal body, and still weight the same.
Ideally, full frame compatible as well.
And that will be everything lens, right? And that will be compromises, that's for sure. And yeah, we can't have everything. Unfortunately, that's not how the world works. I think I saw another comment that I want to read as well. Just let me scroll back up a little bit. Where is it? Okay, yeah, I want to answer this one, Anthony. Maybe I'll just bring it up to the view here. a 6.3. It's talk about the lens, the 150 to 600 lens. So at the smallest, at longest end, the aperture will drop down to 6.3. In most cases, it's going to be very difficult to achieve a shutter speed of 1/2000 of a second at a minimum, unless one is using this lens on super bright day. Funny enough, actually, because when I was testing the lens, there are quite a few days that was very overcast. It's not bright at all, and it really depending on what you're photographing, because if you're shooting a bird in flight, for instance, in the sky, and even the sky is dull, overcast, but it's still a bright background, comparatively. So like I don't think you're gonna have any problem to do that, but in most cases you'll find that I actually use relatively high ISO anyway, and I was testing not only the lens capability, but also at the same time checking the noise level on the cameras to see whether there's any kind of effect if I shoot these type of scenarios. And I find that even with 1600, 3200s are perfectly usable, especially after using DxOs or any other noise reduction software, and I don't have a problem with that at all. When I do the OM-1 Mark II review, I use the 150 to 600 in JPEG mode, also shooting fairly high ISO as well, and I don't see actually any problem with that. So I don't think it's significant unless you are really talking about, photographing in the first light, and or just about sunset time when the light really does dim down. And I think that's the time when you do starting to see the MFT in general will struggle anyway at that sort of aperture range, and while trying to maintain shutter speed, you may have to start pushing to 12,800, if not slightly higher, to get that sort of shutter speed. But then again, it really depending whether you do need that shutter speed for that particular subject. If you're trying to track something that's moving very quick in the dark, I think that none of the even full frame camera will struggle, because you are really pushing the camera's AF and also the ISO all the way up. And even with full frame lenses, you talk about like really high end ultra tele lenses with 5.6 f4.5 apertures, those prime lenses that cost about 20 grand to get. Even those, you are looking at very high ISO setting to capture something that fast anyway. So it's kind of like a academic calculations there.
I think that aperture goes with the focal length as well. I mean, the only way to significantly improve on that with the 600mm lens is to pay what currently appears to be about £13,000 for a super telephoto for a 600mm f4 prime from Sony, for example, or Canon. That kind of focal length does bring a smaller maximum aperture. And if you want to improve significantly on f6.3, you're talking about a massive upgrade in lens design and cost and weight. And you're probably not going to achieve that with the zoom design either.
Yeah.
So I think it goes for the territory, really, that kind of maximum aperture, I think.
Yeah, it does. It does. Very interesting comment here. Just appear. Does Olympus, Panasonic, or any camera company has a clue how to attract the next generation of photographers with entry-level cameras, which will aspire and buy the high-end stuff later? Very, very good comment. We talked about it, and I think entry-level cameras are very important for any brand. Not just getting into the brand, but also allowing access for photography or content generations in general, whether it's video or not. It's important, and at the moment, unfortunately, like you said, you seem to find that not many camera companies are interested in the entry-level cameras. And from what I understand or read online, at least, is that they're not profitable, the entry-level cameras. So this is probably the reason why they have kind of slowed down on the promotional or even making them, because they don't make money. Simple as that. And when people throw in older techs into the lower entry-level camera, people scream, So, so like it's kind of like a no-win situation there. So people complain if they
It
don't
is a
have the
little bit,
latest
yeah.
tech,
Yeah.
and I think it's all down to our own doing in a way. You know, when a company release a lower end cameras that doesn't have latest and the greatest techs, and people would basically ignore the camera altogether, or just basically say, "Oh, that's a rubbish camera," and
Yeah.
complain and rant about it.
That's the issue. They get bad reviews because they're out of date or use old tech. I mean, there are beginner cameras. The Canon EOS R100 is cheap as anything. There's the Nikon Z30,
Yep.
which is quite cheap. Sony ZV-10 is quite cheap. So there are cheap cameras, but just not cheap MFT cameras anymore, sadly.
No, no, but I'm hoping that will change at some point, and we're still looking
Yeah.
forward to some entry level cameras from both Panasonic or Olympus, to do something. Because I think it is critical, but I think that like you said already, and we actually created this because whenever there's a camera, there's a lower spec camera come out, people say, "Oh no, that's wrong. You know, that's horrible. Why can't you have the latest sensors? Why can't you have a hybrid AF? Why
Yeah.
can't you shoot 4K 60? Why there's a lot of why, and then you
Yeah. Yeah.
it's hurting. You know, like because beginners don't need those stuff. Let's put it that way. That's what the camera was designed for. If you think about entry level
I
cameras.
don't need that stuff.
So like, it's quite heartbreaking in a way that, and to see comments and reactions like that, and yeah, we do need them, but then again, the reactions may not be as good as what the company has thought about, and they're already not really a profitable option anyway for the company to make. Yeah, you know, imagine that it may sound easy and think about, oh yeah, just release one. But then I think thinking about manufacturing side of it, you're making it, even though they may use old text, but they still need a new circuit board and to custom fit into the body. The body needs to be redesigned, and then also retooled for the manufacturing. All these are really high cost. You know, they cost as much as the high-end cameras. You know, believe me or not, because the tooling is a standard cost. Regardless, it's going to be a 5,000 cameras or 500 pound cameras. The tooling itself in the manufacturing line, it costs the same to make. So that from that point perspective, then you can start to understand why the lower end camera doesn't really make money, and unless it sell loads, unless it sell tons of them, and that's a different story, right? But it's a thing that we have to understand now. You know, the camera market is not what it used to be, and in terms of numbers, and entry level cameras may be important, but from a business point of view, I don't think it makes too much sense unless they can see there's a way into for people to continue staying with the system and also upgrading in time. But for those. And I think they certainly have some statistics going on there for people who buy into the system entry level cameras, and then they look into the demographics and all the target customers, and how often do they upgrade, or if they do upgrade to a newer or high end cameras, they might actually find it quite discouraging, because not many people actually do that. A lot of people buy a camera in the past, even nowadays, is that it's an occasional thing, it's a holiday thing, it's a special occasion. They buy it. Maybe they are genuinely interested in photography and getting a proper camera compared to a smartphone. Oh, I want to get into photography, I want to get into video making, I want a proper camera. They buy into it, but those are very far and few in between. It's not an everyday thing. And I know new generation photographers are there. They are desperately looking for something to access. And I think that's a strategy that all camera manufacturers are now making, is that if you can't afford the latest and the greatest stuff, buy secondhand. I think that's the strategy now. And Sony is having a slightly different tactics by keeping the entire lineup, as old as 10 years old cameras are still on. You can still buy new, and so like they're keeping older cameras in the catalog because that's accessible for people. They lower the price to the point that you can get into the system, and not sure whether other people can follow suit, because I don't think Olympus OM system would do that, because they traditionally just move on and discontinue the older product and just move it out of the catalog altogether.
Difficulties with the branding and the brand name as well, probably with the older models.
Yeah, that certainly plays part of it as well. And Panasonic also, once they discontinue something, they take it out of the catalog. They don't sell them anymore. Fujifilm, same thing. They once it's discontinued, stop, gone, disappear. I think Sony's the only company that actually still sell old products new.
It does. I for a long time I used a Sony A6000, which I bought several years after it came out for 400 quid new with a kit lens, and it's quite a good camera. I've currently got a Sony A7 II, which is, how old would that be? 7 or 8 years. But for what I bought it for, it's as effective as buying a modern alternative. So I think this idea of keeping old cameras on sale is a good one. It's a good strategy for getting people into that system. And I'm pretty sure it's working very well for Sony. So I'm not really sure why others don't do it, but there it is.
Yep.
I'm sure there are plenty of Fujifilm cameras that they're thinking, oh, perhaps we should have maybe we should have carried on making that. X100V. Ooh.
Yeah. I know. Tell me about that. Even the X Pros are they people still want them, right? The X Pro 3.
Yeah. And for everyone who buys a camera, there's some potential lens sales there. And after that, there's a potential for a rather more expensive version of the thing they originally bought. I think they're a good way into a system. And once you're embedded in the system, it's quite hard to leave because you've probably invested in lenses, not just cameras.
Yeah. I think someone just posted, I think the same person here. Sorry, I can't pronounce your name, and apology for that. So it is all about marketing. The camera industry needs a campaign only possible with a real cameras.
Yes, that's not a bad one. That's not
bad. That's not bad. I think they try though, but then again, like who has a bigger marketing budget these days? I think like Apple and Google and Samsung, they have higher budget.
It's not going to work for Sony because they make Xperia phones, don't they? Which aren't doing so great. So Sony won't do that. But I think that would be a good marketing attitude. And Angela wants to know, do we know that Sony makes money off its cameras? Who knows? If it didn't, it would stop.
It's quite funny you mentioned that, because if you look at a lot of the reports, they always group everything together into consumer electronics into one category. So like you just can't tell exactly what's going on behind the scenes.
No company does stuff that loses it money.
Yeah.
They might do it for a few weeks or a few months, but they won't keep doing it.
Yeah.
So
but let's summarize a little bit, and before we kind of wrap up today's chat. I think we talked enough about the new camera and the new lens. I mean, I know everybody may have split opinions and reactions to the latest releases. I personally quite happy about it, and from a professional point of view, obviously my use case and my opinion is slightly different to perhaps a lot of you, because you don't use the camera to make money or to push that sort of limit. But then again, I'm not a wildlife photographer, which the OM-1 Mark II is purely aiming at. But there are some updates that I'm quite happy about as a photographer, such as the updated dial that I mentioned. The new AF system is good, and for both stills and videos. And there are other subtle changes as well, which I haven't mentioned, like the button. I don't know if you know, Rod, the back button here, the little thing here, all the little buttons here, used to be a kind of hard-coded painted button, so you can rub off, the word would disappear over time, which happens to my OM-1 now. If I show you, so this is my OM-1, the original. So the ISO thing's gone, so you can't even read it, and then probably can't see it, but anyway, yeah, you know what I mean. So the buttons, if you use a lot, the text were gone. The new camera has done something to it, and I can't remember exactly what it was now. So it doesn't rub off. If you're trying to scrape it off, it doesn't scrape off. So it's a very different buttons that they use, or different construction, different method of making it. This is just little things, but little things that matter in a way that people may not actually appreciate. So they have done something, or maybe even more so, listening to customers and consumers, users, and to improve the cameras. It may not be as revolutionary as, let's say, jumping from the EM1 Mark III to the OM-1, and like completely different sensor architecture from a normal LiveMOS to a backlit BSI sensor, which is a very different change. And but But equally, the Mark 1 and the Mark 2 cameras have a different AF algorithm, which is a very different camera in terms of behavior. So in the usage point of view, to me at least, it's a new camera. But people may have split opinions on that, and I can totally respect that. But like I said in my review, if you have the OM-1, if you're happy about it, and I don't think, you know, the OM-1 Mark II will gain you anything, because unless you use some of the features that I mentioned, like I definitely need a live grade ND. I definitely need that. That's cool. Then the Mark II would definitely a choice, right? And I constantly shooting 500-600 frame, you know, when I do birds. Well, then obviously, you can tell that's probably the only way to go now, because that's the only one camera to give you that buffer size. But if you don't, you're just like a normal day-to-day photographer going out, you know, enjoying your photography. I mean, I don't see the OM-1 is any worse than the Mark II. Not at all. You know, the same build, same ergonomics, same EVF, you know, everything pretty much the same. And I think from that perspective, these are two great cameras. So I don't think you would go wrong with either. So whether you need one or the another is depending completely on your user case, and whether you need those new features, new buffer, whatever, anything. Now the lens is another thing, and if you are thinking about this lens, if you are contemplating about the focal length, you know, Rod already said that, and unless you have very huge amount of bank account in money in your bank account, you can obviously get the high resolution full frame, get the 600mm lens and crop in, but you will actually lose a lot of things other than just about equivalence and things like that. You are talking about losing the shooting experience of physically, optically seeing that object that close in the viewfinder. Second, you may not have the same stabilization, because full frame stabilization is very, very different to Micro Four Third. And third, I don't think you will have the same speed either, because high resolution cameras are not tailored for speed shooting. So there are a few things that you may have to bear that in mind. Alternatively, you just have to get back to MFT and start look for a lens that will give you 600mm focal length, which on at the moment, I think that's the only lens that will give you 600mm. I'm talking about actual 600mm, not 300x2. So, so that's the thing that we are going to wrap it up today. I think I'll leave it up to you guys to consider these new releases on the OM system side, and let me know. I think let us know, and what sort of products you may want to see from OM system in the future, and maybe something I could feed that back. And I know we already said a Pen F, and everybody jumping up and down about Pen F. I think even Rod wants a Pen F. So something that
I can't have one. I've put it behind me.
I would like to see a new pen. That's for sure. This is something that I always lust about. You know, if Olympus or OM system makes another pen camera, you know, that would be fantastic. I don't care whether it's going to be a low end EPL or EP series or a Pen F Mark II. I don't care. Just a pen camera. I just want a pen, and I mean, ideally it will be a Pen F2, because that will be something I personally think that will be a great success, because now everyone is jumping up and down for these retro style cameras. Rod and I have been discussing about retro styling camera for the last few months now. You know, we can see the demand is there at the moment. And so you know, earlier we were saying about attracting new customers and new photographers, and retro route seems to be doing the magic. You know, you look at the Nikon is doing fantastically well, attracting new customer with the ZFC and the ZF line. People don't even heard about photography. We're starting, I want that camera because it looks cool. You know, it's a fashion thing. People is talking about it. So it's like, so one of those popular things online, if people are talking about it, raving about it, even if you're not a photographer, I want that, because everyone's got one. So yeah, it's a halo, it's a halo effect. So unfortunately, that's the thing, right? And then Fujifilm, the X100 is selling like hotcakes. You can't even get hold of them. Used is selling more than new. It's ridiculous.
It is, yeah. I should have held on to mine. I didn't like it, but I should have kept it.
Yeah. So like, imagine that. So like, I would totally see that if OM system does decide to get something retro again, and whether it's going to be revamped OM5 with a nicer looking body, whatever, I don't know, change, maybe a slightly updated body, and then a good pen camera, I think they're gonna sell pretty well there, and obviously they will have to slightly target in a slightly different way, not wildlife, but it has to be a very city-based kind of a more influencer space, very much like what Rod
Yeah.
said before. Very much like Instagram users. Kind of that theme going around cities, going about blogging, vlogging, that kind of thing to attract new people talking about the cameras and the new system. That would be quite cool. I think that should do the magic for OM system. But then again, we're only talking about it, so let's keep our fingers crossed, something to happen in the future. And but either way, all I'm trying to say in all these chats before is that everyone should enjoy the photography. It's all about photography at the end of the day. It's all about creating images. Whatever gear you use is irrelevant. It's secondary. It's you got to be happy about yourself. You got to be happy about what you do. Yeah, a lens could cost a fortune, but if you save up and buy it, like I don't get all my gears free. I mean, I have to buy some of them. It's just, it's expensive. I know that, and all camera gears are expensive these days anyway. So, but at the end of the day, this is your hobby, right? This is something that you're passionate about. You spend that money, you use it, you're happy about it. Forget about what everybody else is saying, and just keep yourself, smiling every single day. Take a look at your pictures, go out and enjoy yourself, and have some shutter therapy, just like Robin said, right? Any final words for you, Rod? And then before we wrap up today's session?
No, I think that pretty well sums it up. There's been a lot of conversation about alternative systems and synthesizers and cropping and cost comparisons. I think if we go down that particular wormhole, we'll be here for a week. I think we should probably stop.
Yeah. I just saw another comment popped up about Canon R7 200 to 800 or the OM-1 150 to 600.
Why?
Yeah, and well, to be quite honest, seriously, if you have an OM-1 already, if you have any Olympus cameras, it's probably more cost effective and better to get the new lens, because you already have the camera. All you need just the lens, right? And also it has hybrid Sync IS working, so you don't have to worry about stabilization. You get a lot more than that.
So I think I've seen a couple of comments about the EOS R7. If you've got one, stick with it. If you're comparing systems and thinking, shall I get an R7, a bigger lens, and crop it down? Don't.
Yeah.
Just get the system that you need. Don't try and adapt a different system to do a similar thing. That's all I would say.
Yeah, well, like I said in the earlier portion of the chat, right? And if you already have invested in a system, and I don't see a point to switch, I would say add is another thing. Adding a system is another thing for a very specific use case. But if you're already in a system, let's say whether it's going to be in Panasonic or OM system or Nikon, Canon, whatever, whoever, Sony, Fuji, if you're already in the system, have a whole bunch of lenses, it will probably cost you more to switch these days. You look at the prices of anything these days. To switch to a new system, it's going to cost you a fortune. Anything that you sell, you're getting less than half of what you invested. So just thinking from a financial point of view, I think it's probably better to stick with the system and get the lens that you want than actually completely wipe it out and then move it over to another system. And like I said, a lot of manufacturers nowadays are not actually looking for switches. They're looking at new customer by means of actually adding their system to the portfolio. It's slightly different story among the full frame users, because like full frame, they are competitors, natural competitors, because they're same format, same lenses, same focal length, so like they can switch between them. But MFT, luckily, we're in a small pond. We have a very kind of thing. Crazy ultra long zooms that you can't get in full frame. So like it's some, or at least you can't afford to get in full frame. So like it's something that we just have to bear it in mind. And I think if you are already invested, stick with that, and then just get the lens that you want, and that would be my suggestion. And don't forget, if you're already in MFT, lucky that most of the stuff that is intercompatible between Panasonic and Olympus. I know if you're in the Panasonic cam, unfortunately, I don't think the Sync IS will work for the new 150 to 600 lens, because it's tailored for the Olympus bodies. And so you have to either stick with the body IBIS or the lens IS only. You can't use both. So, but that's always been the case, and that's something that I always wanted to them to address. Both Panasonic and Olympus work together, just to sort out the Sync IS stuff, and so then we all benefit from each other for other options in terms of lenses choice. But other than that, I'm happy. That's all I can say. I think that we should wrap this up. I think it's going quite well today. Actually, it's been over 2 hours, and thank you guys for listening to our ranting. Or not rant. We didn't complain. We didn't talk about things negatives. And but yeah, we're happy to see you all here. And next week we're gonna have other topics. We may talk a little bit about camera industry or some other things. We're gonna come back to the retro stuff as well, and at some point, because this seems to be the trend, and we always like to talk about vintage stuff. We have some old lenses that we want to talk about. We want to talk about editing, because Rod is a specialist in editing, so he can talk to you, I think or two about getting your photograph to look old, to look vintage. And if you want to check out Rod's website as well, he has a lot of really useful articles there to read about all this Lightroom stuff and other technologies about editing and stuff, and anything to do post-production. So that is very important as well, not just about shooting, it's about editing your photos. So Rod has a lot of resources there as well. The links is in the description, so check out his website. So in the meantime, you guys enjoy yourself, happy shooting, and if you have any other question, please don't hesitate to leave some comments in the stream here after the thing is finished. And you can always, if you miss any portion of this chat today, I know it's a little bit long, but you can always stream back on demand through the YouTube Music app, listening to it as a podcast, or simply just rewatch this whole video with our faces on, and if you like to see us. And so that's the only thing I want to say now. Okay, thanks again for joining us this afternoon or evening or morning, wherever you are. We will all speak to you next time. So until next time, I will see you all very, very soon. Bye for now.